Who is this guy? Why am I listening to him? I'm not even going to prison. Someone left that YouTube comment last week following a video I did about James. Someone then said, this guy is a Democratic operative. All he does is make excuses for her. Then someone said, this guy's mega Republican here. He wants James to go away for life. Based on these comments and the content that I cover, I thought it would be an opportunity to introduce or reintroduce myself to the white collar advice community. I'm so thankful that you're here. If you find value, please like and subscribe. I don't need a whole lot of time to get you up to speed, but I want to share the screen rather than just tell you, because it gives you a little bit more authority, or I should say more authority, authenticity about how I got here. For some background, I grew up in Encino, California, which is a Jewish enclave just outside Los Angeles, and baseball defined my life. It was everything. I had wonderful parents who taught me right from wrong, really difficult coaches. Indeed, my coaches today would never be able to coach in the age of YouTube. They'd all be canceled in about 15 seconds, but it worked for me. I had the privilege of playing in the Pony, Babe Ruth, and the College World Series. And when I graduated USC in 1997, I wanted to build my career as a stockbroker. And if you want to learn the longer, more detailed story, of course, there's Lessons from Prison, a book you can get for free. Do not buy it. It's available on my website. When I graduated USC, I'm at Merrill Lynch, Bear Stearns, and then I ended up at UBS at 27 years old as a young broker with a multi-million-dollar bonus and a lot of pressure. And after going to UBS, something terrible happened with a new client that we were working with. We had a client that had a hedge fund that had $6 million when he brought it over, and he lost it. Damn. He raised another $6 million. He lost that too. Damn. Now, part of the reason I was saying damn is because while he's raising and losing money, he's paying $100,000 to $200,000 a month in commissions every single month. That was helping us prove worthy of the big bonus we got, my partner and I. Huge bonus. Yet, we knew if he's raising money and losing money and raising money and losing money, he's only raising money because he's lying to people. No rational investor would give money to a hedge fund manager if they knew that hedge fund manager had lost every penny. Yet our suspicions about his conduct didn't dissuade us from accepting the trades and the heavy commissions. We liked the money. We liked the commissions. Eventually, my suspicions were confirmed when I attended a meeting and I outright heard him lie to someone about his return, like flat out lie. And if you've watched a YouTube video, you know I could ramble. I could stand to wrap it up a little bit. Instead, in that meeting, when I heard him lie about a return that didn't exist, he said he averaged 27% a year. He lost every penny. I kept my mouth shut. I turned the other way. I was willfully blind, as the government said. I pretended that I didn't hear anything. Now, truth be told, I did more than be willfully blind. My conduct was criminal. I allowed this fraud to continue. And as the government correctly alleged, I gave my client, Keith, the hedge fund manager, credence or credibility that he had not earned, because when his investors grew concerned about their investment, what would they do? They would call Justin, the vice president at UBS, to give them comfort. I made bad decisions, leading to getting fired from UBS in January 2005. That led to a government investigation. If you ever would like to meet anyone who responded terribly to a government investigation, that would be yours truly. I never thought about prison. Like, I wasn't raised knowing people that went to prison or jail. The only person I kind of knew was Michael Milken, who grew up in Encino, because I played baseball with his nephew. Remember the Junkmon King who went to Lompoc and made about $700 million one year and then went to prison? I wasn't raised with people going to prison. I thought maybe, I get into trouble civilly. I lose my job. I never thought criminal. And put it this way, I acted accordingly. After getting fired from UBS, the FBI shows up at my home 3 months later. I then hire a lawyer, lie to the lawyer. I then meet with the FBI, lie to the FBI. I later learn that's obstructing a federal investigation. And then my co-defendant, Keith, is cooperating, cutting a deal with the government. And as a result of that cooperation over like 14 or 15 months, I eventually learned that I was the target and they were going to come and indict me, or I could plead guilty to one count of conspiracy to commit securities fraud. And I will tell you that 3 years waiting to get sentenced was brutal. I did not live with dignity. I put on weight. I smoked. I chewed a lot of tobacco. And to the extent that I can help others get through it better than I did, I want to. To that end, I'm writing a new book called After the Fall. It's free. I put up a chapter a week on my website before I publish it on Amazon. And in chapter 1, I call it Silence Isn't a Strategy. It's a Sentence. I sat back, did nothing, let the government do my marketing and branding for me through the DOJ release. I had good lawyers, but I outsourced everything to them. I let them say why I was a first-time nonviolent offender who would never do it again, and I was a candidate for leniency. I didn't do anything to try to persuade government stakeholders that I was different than the victim's version of events, because I created victims. Even though they all got their money back before sentencing, it doesn't replace the pain and shame that they went through, in part because of me. So sitting back, doing nothing for 3 years, compelled Judge Wilson in my sentencing hearing to say, I'm tired of salesmen turning the other way for money. Most don't get caught. You did. I'm going to make an example out of you and send you to prison. I was frankly super excited to get to prison because you finally get credit for time served. The process indeed is the punishment, the waiting and wondering. I was happy to get to prison, get this party started, but like so many people, I wasted the early months of my federal prison sentence with blaming, excusing I was the victim, a terrible way to live. And all I did was exercise, like 6-7 hours a day. But while I was there exercising, I found a friend and mentor. And many of you have heard me mention my good friend, Michael Santos. My friend Michael, who served 26 consecutive years in prison. And in fact, let me show you Michael. By the way, this is my family. My wife, Sandra. I have 2 children. Jason is now 7, Alyssa 7. We are a baseball and golf family, I can tell you that much. I met Michael when he was in his 22nd year in prison. That's Michael when he went in 1987. And Michael could see that I wanted something better, but I was directionless. And one day he said, so what is success for you? I couldn't answer. And he said, what outcome are you trying to engineer? I couldn't answer. And then he helped me understand how my choices of blaming and exercise were going to put me on a path where I was simply going to ask a friend for a job as a favor, a job I had not earned. And then he encouraged me to understand and study my environment. Indeed, I did. I began to see men getting scared to go home. Now, you think of like the real violence in prisons. There's no violence. There was boredom. But a lot of men wasted their time on ESPN and table games and bocce ball and now pickleball and tennis and the track. And they weren't preparing for the hard part, learning to overcome the collateral consequences of a felony conviction. So I began to see these good dudes scared to go home, turning down visits with their wife. And I'm like, I'm so lucky I'm 33 without a wife and children, but I'm used to being successful. What am I going to do on the other side? So Michael encouraged me to introspect and begin to do what I encourage all of you, if you're immersed in a government investigation, to do. Begin to create some asset that doesn't exist. And here's where my life changed. There is no YouTube channel or media or business or success without this first blog that I wrote with Michael's help, the 12th of October, 2008. If you are traversing this system, I hope you have a great lawyer. And I want your great lawyer to say why you are a candidate for leniency. No doubt. Let him sell you're cooperating, you're paying back the money, it's the first time not. Let him sell all the great stuff. You got to do the lion's share of the work. You were the star here. And this first blog that I created, I wish I had created something like this when I was a defendant, because I could have controlled the narrative and showed that I was better. This first blog, as I wrote, Sunday, October 12, 2008, to my mom. I'm in my assigned cubicle at Taft's minimum security camp. I'm seated in a plastic chair with my feet propped up on the steel frame of my bunk. And at the end of this blog, I wrote, in the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king, and where there is darkness, my writings will provide sight. This first blog or asset changed my entire life. If you're going through this wretched system, what asset are you creating to influence people? I wrote that from prison with hopes that it would influence someone to read it, that it would get them out of bed. They would start brushing their teeth, things I didn't do, stop chewing tobacco, stop drinking, stop eating because I was so depressed and I couldn't imagine I had ended up here. The envy I felt, hating others for having things that I thought I should have too. I began to write this blog or create this asset. And unbeknownst to me, it started this business because within several weeks in prison, I began to get dozens of letters. On a Friday and a mail call, I got 50 letters, which was off-putting to some prisoners, I know, because one said to me, you're a tourist. Your prison sentence is too short to be talking and writing about prison. You are not an expert, which leads to something I want to cover. I am not a prison consultant. I'm thankful that media, and I'll take it, but I'm thankful that media, Dr. Phil, CNN, Fox, Washington Post. I'm grateful they call me and they invite me, but I am not a fixer. I am not a prison consultant. Anyone can go to jail for a year or two and fancy themselves an expert. They don't have the depth and breadth of experience. They ask you to do things they have not done. It is not documented. And people in this business or space are vulnerable. They want to get out of prison. They want a shorter sentence, and they will invest and spend money without confirming the person can do what they say they are going to do. You do not need a prison consultant. I am an ambassador, a student of my partner, Michael, who endured 26 consecutive years in prison. As I film this, he's in prisons all across the country: Thompson, Oxford, Leavenworth, Aliceville. Today he's in Miami. Tomorrow he's going to Coleman. Recently, he spent time with Josh Smith, the Deputy Director of the Federal Bureau of Prisons, as we initiate our big changes. Michael is an expert through 26 years. The depth and breadth, everything I teach, everything I sell at White Collar Advice comes from his experience. And I say it proudly, I am his best student. And as a result of that work or partnership, when people hire our team at White Collar Advice, a good percentage of those revenues go to the nonprofit, which helps Michael travel the country at no expense to the BOP, to send thousands of books to people in prisons and jails. It's allowing people in prison to document their journey online for free. Look at this, 2,783 people have chosen to create profiles to document their way to freedom, 919 in the last month. I'm so grateful we began to engineer that together in 2008. What are you engineering? What are you creating? So much like I create content every single day, a blog, a video, a newsletter, a webinar, and I document every piece of that asset, you too need to do the same exact thing. It is the only way that you can overcome this cynicism, because stakeholders like a judge and a probation officer and a case manager, they think we are liars. They do not believe anything that we say. And the only way that you overcome it is to create something that does not exist. That's what that blog did in 2008. That blog was the harbinger for Lessons from Prison, a book Michael helped me write. As a result of that book, years before I became a consultant, even running White Collar Advice, I traveled the country lecturing on ethics and white collar crime. And it started because from prison, I began writing letters to professors at business schools, letting them know that I wanted to help their students understand how bad decisions can derail the life they're meant to live. And I wanted to be like a guinea pig, letting them see real time the collateral consequences that follow. A university came and they interviewed me. I was released in 2009. I wrote a second book. And for many years, I began building my career as a speaker on ethics and white collar crime. In 2014, something happened. I had a baby. My wife and I had a baby girl. And I knew that I didn't want to continue to travel the country, lecturing on my experience and being away from home. And I made a 100% pivot to building White Collar Advice full time. Michael got released in 2013. And I said, I'm going to begin to create for a different audience, namely people traversing the system full time. I created the YouTube channel in 2014. I still look back at some of those videos I filmed and laugh, though I'm grateful that I produced them and memorialized them, because by memorializing them and documenting them, I can reflect back on them and see how far I've come and how much my messaging has changed. Even 10 years ago, I kind of sounded like a prison consultant, you can say. I just didn't have the depth and breadth of experience. And now it's easier at 50 to be fully transparent and just share all the lessons I learned from Michael, with hopes that it benefits people going through the criminal justice system. As I wrap up this video, I would encourage you, if you have interest in learning more, to spend a few minutes every week on After the Fall, and how I picked myself up as a result of my government investigation. For example, in chapter 2, I call myself the walking cliche. And the chapter opens up upon my release from prison. And when I went to the halfway house in Hollywood, I used my second 4-hour pass to cold walk into law offices in downtown Los Angeles peddling my book. And I joked that a lot of lawyers threw me out. They laughed at me. They mocked me. But I had dignity in trying and putting myself in front of people, even though it was a very humbling experience. And in the chapter that I wrote yesterday, I go through this experience of how some people, because you are a convicted felon, could discount you, who could think that you are less or accept less. And I go through this example of a university that invited me to speak and told me I would be the highest paid speaker. And then the organizer mistakenly sent a message to me. And here's what the message said. He's a fraudster out of jail. Yes, he might be the highest rated speaker, but that doesn't mean we should pay him more. Plus, it would be hard to pay him more than a Forbes journalist who's coming in to speak. Offer him less. I'm sure he'll take it. That was like a moment for me. I could take less, or I could hold the line as I wrote and say, I should be paid based on merit and performance, not accept less because I'm a criminal. And they agreed, and it was a wonderful event. And these are some of the lessons I strive to convey. I also write about going on an online dating site immediately after prison. But this is how I'll close as I introduce you to the White Collar Advice community, as you wonder who this guy is. At the end of this chapter, I shared the story of something Dave Chappelle said. He was on stage talking about a show that bombed. People are booing, they wanted their money back. And he said, people of Detroit, let me be clear. You will never get your money back. I'm like Evel Knievel. I get paid for the attempt. I want all of you going through a government investigation to attempt, to recalibrate, to pick yourself up after the fall, to try, to start, to create some asset that demonstrates you are different than the government's version of events. When I started filming YouTube videos, some were awful, some still are. I said things I couldn't believe. Sometimes I would do 100 takes on a video and I'd post it and I'm like, that is the one. That is the one. 17 days later, it would have 17 views. But I was willing to try and get started. And in so doing, I developed skills. And by developing skills and learning, you know when to pivot. The biggest mistake people make traversing a government investigation is stalling, delaying, thinking that they have time. So if you're watching this and if you're going through a government investigation, let me remind all of you, I think we send too many people to prison. I know so many of these cases should be handled civilly. I know you don't agree with the government's version of events, but I know the prosecutor wants to advance their career and send you to prison. If you do not begin embracing that message and showing how you are different, you're going to get exactly what you don't want, which is a longer sentence, more time in prison, and letting this experience through the criminal justice system define the rest of your life. I don't want that for you. I don't want that for your family. So I'd encourage you, before I go to prisonprofessors.org, create your profile, begin to create, get yourself on the leaderboard. So when you go to a probation interview, when you go to a sentencing hearing, when you meet with a case manager, when you write a letter to your probation officer from prison, they can see you're not just talking about it. You are demonstrating over a sustained period of time who you are, what you've learned, where you're going, why you are different than the government's version of events, how you will hold yourself accountable moving forward, how you are part of the solution. I'm so thankful that you're in our community. Thank you for watching this video. I look forward to returning soon. Bye-bye.